All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Thursday learning sessions. Today I have Darren Johnson, who's my guest, and he will be talking about 15 Google Analytics features that you must know and use. Very powerful features. He has written a blog post on that, which I went through, and it's pretty good. And I think you will find, I'm sure you will find tons of value in this session. So before I hand it over to Darren, I want to make sure you guys give it a thumbs up to this video and make sure to subscribe the channel. And those who are new and are just joining for the first time, we conduct these sessions on every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Hi, Umang. How are you? So if you want to join those sessions, I will drop a link here. You can sign up to receive notifications, or you can just subscribe to the channel and you will get the notifications when we go live. But I expect you to actually sign up on the list so I can send you other marketing stuff as well. That's the whole point, right? Now, kidding, we do a lot of training. Well, not really kidding, but we do a lot of free training, as well as there are paid training options for those who want to learn. So, hi Manjari. I'm reading the comments here. So Darren, if you see me looking that side, I'm just reading the comments. Cool, man. Thank you. He's just doing my sound check, I guess. So that's great. And so I hope you have liked the video. There are a few more people who haven't liked the video yet, so give it a thumbs up and make sure to leave comments. The way this session works is it's interactive, which means as Darren is going through the slides, feel free to jump in and ask your questions, and I will stop him. Consider this as an interactive, session where you're sitting in a lobby bar or somewhere and having a conversation. He's showing you his expertise. You can chime in and agree, disagree, whatever you want to do. Just go ahead and put those comments in. I want to make it very interactive if we can. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Darren, who is now going to tell us what this session is about, and also, before he goes into the session, about him. Why should you listen to him? So, Darren, all you now.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Yeah, so first of all, why should you listen to me? Well, I've been an analyst for over 22 years. I've been in digital analytics for 15 years. I've run my own company, as well as last year I went in-house to a company to see how they were doing things. They were a bit more advanced than a lot of the companies I had worked with before. My expertise is, I have expertise in SQL and working with Google Analytics and GTM, and worked with Fortune 500 companies and worked with little companies and everybody in between. And of course, write a blog on, and actually it was on my Fujo Analytics site, and I've just moved it over to my darrenjjohnson.com site. So it could just be a little bit more about me on the blog side of that.
Yeah, and I'll drop a link in the comment. Once he sends me that link, you guys can find him on there. So one thing I would sorry to interrupt you. I think this is speak about, a little bit about, you said you were a web analyst and digital analyst and now doing SQL and R, and which is what I keep hammering to everybody. You need to start learning those things. 5 years ago, you could get by without learning those things, but now it's becoming more and more critical. So
yeah, and you shouldn't be too intimidated by it. I mean, a few years ago, I didn't know anything about R. I'd kept my hand in SQL. I mean, I also know VB and VBA, but I hadn't programmed that in a long, long time. So, R is a bit of a learning curve, but if you stick with it, you definitely can learn it. And I think it's really valuable. I used to use a lot of Excel, a lot of spreadsheet work being an analyst. And pretty much I don't do any of that anymore. It's all through R. So if I'm going to do something outside of, a Google Analytics interface or something like that, it's probably going to be in R. And even
Python.
Huh?
Or Python.
Yeah, or Python. Yes, if you do Python, or Julia is another one too. So I'm just partial to R. It's kind of very analytic centric, So, if you talk to statisticians, you don't even hear, Python too much. They're talking about MATLAB or SAS or SPSS or R. And then with the data scientists, they're talking, is it going to be Python, or is it going to be Julia, or is it going to be R? So, so R is this language that kind of crosses these boundaries between them and stuff. And I actually picked it up just because of the data. Because of the data visualization that you can do there with ggplot and stuff like that. And my blog, I talk about some of those things too. So this particular one is on my, is on 15, 15 features of Google Analytics that you must know and use. And where this came from was that I've had clients along the way that basically said, well, we don't need anything like that. I mean, our platform that we're using for e-commerce or serving or whatever, it's got analytics. So we don't need this other stuff. And so, of course, I'm like, well, it's free. You can just throw it on there. And it's like, well, I think it's good enough. So I started thinking of what are the features about Google Analytics that possibly it doesn't have. So not to bag on any particular analytics platform, but it's really to look at, here are some things I think are kind of important. And, if you don't have that in your platform, then you may want to think about a Google Analytics or maybe Adobe or one of those types of things. So that's basically where that came from.
Cool.
So, and let me see. So going through them now, this I did in just alphabetical order. Some of them are more important to me than others, but for other people, it could be different. I just think that they're all good features. And so let me see if I can share my screen. There we go. Yep. There we are. So hopefully you can see that.
Yes.
And so this is the Google Merchandise store. And this is a demo account. So we can go through stuff on this particular one and take a look at stuff.
Those who are not aware of Google Demo Store, it's a free account. It's an e-commerce store that Google, actually it's a live e-commerce store. So you can go and use the data, look at the reports, etc. Some of the functionality won't be available because you don't have admin edit access. This morning, somebody emailed me, a student who goes, I can't see content groupings because they don't have edit permissions on this account.
Oh.
So yeah, but rest everything should work. So if
and you can always just set up your own little account and then just link this to it. So that's a good way to just kind of start exploring things and stuff too.
I always tell like, hey, set up your own blog.
Yes,
it's not that difficult, and I have few lessons on that on the channel itself. How to set up your blog, put Google Analytics on it, start collecting your data. Use some themes like e-commerce themes out there, WooCommerce themes, etc., and start playing with it. You'll learn so much by playing with it than just looking at the reports. And today's session is going to teach you like what are the things that you should be paying attention to.
Yeah, and what's good is to also just experiment with stuff. So if it's on your own, your own little blog or whatever, you don't have to worry so much about if you're going to break something. Yeah. And so it's always good to try to work with stuff that you're not very familiar with and not very comfortable with. And that way, that's how you learn. So I think it was Mark Zuckerberg who said, break things, something to that extent. And I really like that idea, is go in there and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to do this because I might break it. But well, don't worry about that. If it's your own little site and stuff like that, you can go in there and go, maybe I'm going to break something, but then I'm going to figure out, how to fix it. And so I actually did that with my blog once, and I went into the code itself and I accidentally did something that brought the entire site down and I had to start all over again.
Well, that's how I learned this thing. I learned programming that way. I learned analytics that way, actually just playing and looking at stuff and breaking and building sites. And that's how I got into this. It's like, okay, what is this? One thing led to another, one thing led to the other thing led to another thing, and so on. And I started learning like the details of how web analytics works behind the scene.
Yeah.
So build your own stuff, play with it, break it. That's the best way to learn.
Yep. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, going alphabetically, is annotation. So annotation is is putting into reports and stuff like that what has been happening during that time period. So actually a better way to look at this might be to go here. And so you can see what an annotation actually looks like. So if we go to all traffic, and one of my favorite places to go is just to look at source medium. So I like to kind of see how that's broken down. Now I know this was a really long time ago. I looked this up earlier, so let me see if I can. Let's see if this will work. And see how that works. Okay, let's see how that works out. Probably easier to see it than for me just to explain it. So an annotation is right here. This is an annotation. And over here, we got an annotation too. And tells you who wrote, this was actually Justin Crotoni, who I know who he is. And so he put in here a couple of entries. And if you wanted to add a new entry, you just can go create new annotation, and you can just add in whatever you want to add in. Now, the reason that this is really a great feature is because let's say that you have an e-commerce site and you just started a 50% off sale. So let's just say that's going to start on day one. Let's just say that's going to start here. So that's going to start on October 25th, 2014. Let's say we're in 2014 at this point. So you could put in here October 2014 that that you started that particular sale, and then when it ends, you can put ended here. The reason you might want to do this is because if you look at your e-commerce conversion rates, it may be normally 2%, and then during this big sale, it might end up going up to 5%. And if you don't put any kind of annotation, you might have no idea. And maybe it's future you or future somebody else, and you want to look back and you want to look at what the trending has been in terms of your e-commerce conversion rate. You might be very puzzled as to why you have this, this big conversion rate up here, and then it goes back down, and you're like, I think you can probably figure out that it was probably some kind of a sale or something happened. But any of these kinds of things can really help you to understand what's happening on your site. So anything that's happening outside of your site, it's great to annotate it. And that's why I think it's, why that's an important feature.
Yeah, and one thing I would add is, and I've written a blog post on this, people have short-term memories, right? When you're looking at the data at that point, it makes sense. Oh, this happened. I mean, I'm working with one client just now, and what we are seeing is there is some spider and bot activity, which everybody realizes right now. But a few months from now, people will be like, what happened? And those are the kind of things that you need to annotate so that you can go back and say, oh, we discussed this. This is what happened. We ran this campaign, or this was a spider activity, or, at that time, some external thing happened which caused the dip or the spike in our traffic. All those things, if you put here, then it's easier for you to take it out when you're conducting your analysis, whether it's month end, quarter end, year end, or year over year comparison, those kind of things. So use this feature if you're not using it. Very, very powerful feature.
Yeah, it's a great feature. And this is one place that you can put it. The other place might even be easier is we go over to our admin, go over to the view that you want to put your annotation in, and just click on annotations. And there we have, for this particular view, we have all the annotations here. So the latest one was 2016. So that's another place that, might be much easier, just put a new annotation there. So this is really great for that. And this is something too, where I think that you don't necessarily have to have an analyst do this as well. You can give this access to your marketing team, and they can enter stuff as well. So you may not be the one to know, when something is beginning and ending, and they can just add that in there. My wife and I worked together Fujo for a long time, and she was the one who set up email campaigns for our clients, or did a number of other things. And this was a great tool for her, and she could just go right in there and start doing all this annotation, which I have to admit she was better at doing than I was, keeping up on all that stuff. So that's a really great one, and you don't really see that in every type of platform, but I really like that one. So that's number one.
Cool.
So number two is something I totally use extensively, which is the API. So the API allows you to pull data in from Google Analytics and pull it into other things. You know, if you're using Google Data Studio, you know, you're going to be using the API behind the scenes that you can't see that. But if you're using something like R, like we were talking about, you know, to pull that data in, you can use something like Google Analytics R. So that was written by Mark Edmondson. It's awesome package, which you know is code that you download, and that will allow you to pull that into R and to be able to do your analysis inside R. You might be asking, why would you do that? Well, there's a number of different reasons. There's many different things you might want to do with the data that you can't just do in the Google Analytics interface. Probably a lot of people are used to pulling it into, like, just downloading it from Excel into Excel and working with the data there. So this is another option, which is to connect to R and then pull the data into R. And then you can do all kinds of graphing, or if you want to do forecasting or things like that. So the API to me is really, really valuable. And you can see that on my blog. If you want to take a look at some of those things, and I go step by step through the code so that, you know, you don't have to be overwhelmed by it. And, you know, it actually works. You might have to, you know, jigger it around a little bit to make it work for you. But it should be able to, you should be able to get that up and running. And that's just a great way to do, you know, do different things inside that. So that's one of my favorite things to use is the API for sure. So that's great. The next one is something that you don't have to do anything about. It's just there, but it's a great feature that was added. I believe it was 2009, and I was actually using Google Analytics before this, but it's asynchronous data capture. What it really means is just the code that is running, the JavaScript code that is running for Google Analytics is going to then, it's basically going to take a back seat to all the other code for the site. The way that I always explain this, just in general for digital marketing, for e-commerce, is that the most important thing is that the customer has a great experience on the site. You don't want your analytics code holding that up in any way whatsoever. So using asynchronous allows you to capture more data that you might not capture. Some people might remember that we used to put this code at the footer, and there was a reason for that. We did that because all of the code was executed in line. So if the analytics code was in the header and it held, you know, it could hold things up, it could hold the page from loading, and you don't want that to happen. So when it's asynchronous, once that happened in 2009, guess what? We put it up in the header. And we could do that because now it was asynchronous. It wasn't stopping the rest of the page from loading. And what you could, what it allowed was that you could capture all the data. So what happens if you don't have that and you put it in the footer? Well, somebody could come to the page and then quickly go to another page, and you may not all the code may have executed. And so you may end up not getting that page view. So you end up losing some data. So this is a great thing to have, because it doesn't stop any of the code from loading for the page to finish loading, and you can capture all the data. So so that's a good thing to have, and it's just there. It's nothing that you have to do anything about, but it's great to know about, because if you're using some kind of platform that uses synchronous data capture, not asynchronous, you might have some issues with that. So that's another one.
Cool.
So number 1, 2, 3, number 4 is attribution modeling.
Before you go, this is a big one, right? I keep getting requests, and I want to find out if Roberto, who keeps asking me, is online as well or not. He even last night pinged me, hey, you guys, Anil, I need attribution codes from you. So attribution is a big one, and I want to hear your point of view. Any questions so far? Feel free to write your questions here. Go for it. Yeah. I'll let you know if there are any questions.
Yeah, definitely. Let me know if there's any questions. Yeah, attribution modeling tends to be a big one. It tends to be very very confusing to people, what it means or how to really monetize your your marketing channels and that type of thing. I would say one thing about it is that in a certain way, it's kind of straightforward. I would say in another way, particularly for some of the agencies that I've worked with, it tends to just sound really fancy. Attribution. What is the attribution model that you're using? So what I would say first of all with attribution modeling when you're looking at this is that in terms of your media and how should that be accounted for given attribution modeling and all that kind of stuff, if it's if people are coming to your site at the moment and it's more like it's either a one and done for the vast majority of people that come to your site, or it's they come through a channel and they come back directly to your site, which you could think seems pretty sensible. I mean, somebody comes to your site, they like your site, they bookmark it, and then they come back again. If they're doing that, really just how you see it in Google Analytics is probably perfectly fine. And you don't really have to worry about multi-channel attribution in that sense. You don't really have to think about how am I supposed to calculate my media and that type of thing. If it's a small portion of that, that's probably not the biggest thing that you should concern yourself with in terms of digital analytics and digital marketing. Now, if it's a much larger share, and you would have to decide, I mean, I can't give you an exact number, but if you feel, if it's only like 1 or 2%, obviously that's very small. But if 20, 30, 40% is coming through multiple channels to get to your site, and we're saying something like they came through a display ad, and then they came back through a paid ad, through search, through paid search, and then they came back again through organic search, and that tends to be a pretty strong way that you're seeing a lot of people come through, I guess you could call it. Then you really want to take a look at your models and so on, and how that works. So that would be one thing. Now, when you're in Google Analytics, when you want to find this stuff, there's a couple different places, but I'm going to just try not to be too confusing here, and go down to conversions, and then go down to multi-channel funnels. And then, all this stuff you should explore. There's a lot of great stuff in here. There we go. So this is the model comparison tool. So I'm just going to use this one. Now, with this, one of the things you can do beyond, just trying to divvy up how much, you should listen, for different marketing channels and so on, is also looking at where that particular channel comes in. Does it come in the beginning typically? Does it come in the end? So using this and looking at something like last interaction here, and maybe comparing it to last non-direct click, for example, right? So now looking at this, and now you can look at the comparison between last interaction and the last non-direct click. It's really just non-direct interaction of some kind, and see, is there a difference between the two, and how much of a difference is there? So if we look at referral traffic, for example, the last non-direct click, there's 204 conversions, but if we looked at it from the last interaction, there's only 144. So that's almost a 42% increase by looking at it this way. So should you just use last non-direct click for that then? Is that the appropriate way to do that? Not necessarily. What it does tell you, though, is it tells you where these people are, where the value is coming in. Typically, what we see is display is usually top of funnel. Usually somebody is on a site somewhere, they see an ad, they come to your site, they don't necessarily buy, they come back again. And so again, sometimes it's just direct. But other times it might be, they're like, what was that site again? And then they might Google it, and then they're going to, come through paid search, or maybe even organic search. So this can kind of help you not just, give credit in the sense, because here's your cost per acquisition, giving credit. This is actually almost no, it's identical in this case, but it's being able to look at where these things come into play. And so that's important as well. So there's different ways. I think if you look around for multi-channel attribution, you'll hear about Monte Carlo Markov models, and that's more of a prediction model. which is great. I think that that's something that you can use to take a look at what the value is of your different channels. But I think you also just want to look at the real actual value over a given period of time of each of your channels to see what they actually contributed during a particular period of time. My own view on it overall is that when you look at something like I described, which is a display ad, someone, or a number of people, they went through a display ad, and then they went through paid search, and then they went through organic search, and then they purchased. To me, if you really think about that, and even in a Markov chain, when you think about that, each one of those is a link in the chain. So if one of those is gone, how do you know that they're going to get to the next link in that chain? So for me, I tend to just make it very simple, and I would give that one, if somebody bought something for $100, or that was the total for all people who came, it would be 33 and a third, 33 and a third, 33 and a third for that one. But there might be somebody else, and guess what? They come through a display ad, and then they come directly. So that's really just that display ad. So 100% goes to that. And then you add all those up together. So that's the way I tend to do that. And actually on my site, I created my own multi-channel attribution model and used R to do that.
I was going to ask you, have you used R to create one?
Yes.
Now it's actually much easier getting, in the Google Analytics 4, now the data can be directly, like the hit level data or event level data can be directly ported into BigQuery. So it makes it easier to get the granular data that you need to run your models.
Yeah, and the other thing is like what you see in here, this is just for one time period. That's it. Yeah. So what you can do with in R is that you can cycle that through, so it's multiple time periods. So you can just download a number of them. Like I want to see what it was like each month for the last 2 years, and so you can do that in R, which you can't actually do in Google Analytics. So
yeah, that's one thing. And here's a question from Manjari saying, which one is the best attribution model for Google AdWords? Is there any default model of Google Analytics which they can use for Google AdWords? How to decide which attribution to select? And that's an excellent question, because that's the question that keeps coming up, right? Which model is the best one? How should I be using attribution model? And I'll let you speak, and then I'll put my point of view, but you're the expert here. Let's talk about your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know that there's necessarily a best one. I think that there is one that I've seen from Google, and it's basically the what do they call it? They call it the calculated or something like that. It's really I believe it's a Markov chain model, but that's a predictive model. So you're really applying value based on the prediction of what future value would be. So I think that's great. But with any models and any statistical models, what I would say is that you want to look at multiple models, not just one model and say this is the definitive model. That's the one thing I would say. And just like I was saying here through this, is that you can also just look at these models like last interaction, last non-direct, or even if you want to look at how much does direct play into it. So you should be looking at a number of things like that. That's what being an analyst is all about. So you want to look at a lot of that stuff. And, but ultimately for me overall, for the most part, if you're just saying, God, give me a model, it would be based on each of the marketing channels. And just like I was saying before, display, paid, and then paid search, organic search, and just dividing those up, 33 and a third, 33 and a third. So that's basically what I think should be like the standard model. Now there may be reasons with a given organization that there might be a better model to use.
Yeah.
And I would never say that anything anywhere is ever absolute. There are no absolutes. So you always have to kind of play with this and work around. And who knows, there might be a time that I might go, I used to believe that. And now I because
I don't believe that.
I've changed.
Yeah. Well, I think, it's all about learning, right? As you go, you're playing with different things, different scenarios, right? So to answer, I'll put my thoughts on this one. If you're looking at Google AdWords, for example, one, you have to look at what's the business model. What are you trying to do with that ad, right? Hey, if it's a direct sell, buy something, and you know, and it doesn't take like 5 visits to purchase something like this because they're in the market, and once they click, you expect them to buy it. Then it's the last click for your Google AdWords. Now, you also want to know is how people came to your site. That's a different story. But if you're just trying to figure out what makes search effective or not, you can do that. Now, if your product takes few visits for you to get to sell, paid search might be the last click that they're doing. But then, as Darren was saying, is there are other channels involved. You have to give credit to them. So think about the business that you are in. Where does in the chain of or the funnel, not the funnel anymore, but think about funnel. Where does it fit in your paid search? Is it exposure? All you're trying to do is brand awareness, or mostly paid search is all about last click and get this done. So think about your business model, look at all these different options to learn. Machine learning, in my opinion, is again one of the best ways because then you don't have to sit and look at these things. It can assign those values. It can figure out if something is out of that chain, will that actually impact it or not? As Darren was saying, hey, what if you figure out, hey, paid search is getting all this traffic and let's not do the emails anymore. And your model says, well, if you drop email, then you're not going to get conversions. So there are different ways to look at it. The best is you keep trying. And that's what I'm going to do in the course that I'm building is look at different kind of scenarios and say, this is how you can slice and dice, and this is what's going to work. Or not exact, there is no absolute, but something to give you to start building on. So
Yep.
yeah, pay attention to this is a very powerful feature, and more I'm getting asked about attribution. Yeah, it's like every time people are attribution, and it's not just online attribution, right? It's about TV ads. So you are running a TV ad, and then you have a paid search. Somebody goes, searches on Google, sees your paid ad, click on it. Who should get the credit? Is it paid search, or is it the TV ad that drove the people to search engines when they are?
Yes. So I would add to that too. In your paid search, so you have paid search down here, I would split that up into your branded terms and your non-branded terms. Because if they're punching in your branded terms, they learned about you from somewhere else. So if that's the first touch point that they go to before they come to your site, then some offline thing was happening. Don't know what, but there was something offline. So then you have to, you have to take that with a grain of salt when you look at, oh, look, our paid ads for our branded terms are doing great. And it's like, well, yeah, that's probably, because you're doing advertising. So yeah.
Maybe they received a postcard or something. So you have to look at other elements as well. Saying, why are people doing this? Then you slice it by time. You can look at that as well to see why this is happening.
Yep. So that's a big one.
Yeah.
The next one I have is calculated metrics. So calculated metrics is the next one I have. And let me see. Again, easy to show you probably than to just describe it. So here we are, calculated metrics. How long has this been in beta for? So calculated metrics are those metrics that you would like to have, but are not available, just aren't there in Google Analytics. So maybe you want to calculate something like ROI, or in this case, we're looking at conversion rate per user. So if I just click on that one, so what you can see here is you just give it a name, you give it an external name. So when you're using, this is really great, again, going back to the API, if you wanted to create a calculated metric and then you wanted to pull that into something like R, then this is what you'd have to use right here. So not your name that you give it, but the external name. And then whether it's a percentage or I can't click on this one for this particular account. And then with the, like this one, this is transactions divided by users. So the formula. But this is really nice to have because if you don't have a particular metric that shows up in Google Analytics, you can create one. So, so this is really great. And you can see this
I have a question before we go into this one further. So guys, there is a bit of delay by the time you hear something and Darren is talking about it. So this is a question back to attribution. So that's why I'm going to start here. In your experience, and this is Michael Huntington asking this question, in your experience, how accurate is attribution modeling, especially if you have created custom channel groupings?
How accurate is it? It can be, well, I mean, it can be very, it depends on what you mean. So, you know, when you're talking about,
Right.
you know, how accurate it is, I mean, I think you have to take into account a few different things here. So just quickly, you have to look at maybe somebody, think of an individual, and somebody came to your site first through their phone, and then they decided to purchase on their desktop. So now you've got, you know, multi-devices that you have to think about. So that's going to throw off the accuracy. They could have come to your site and then cleaned out their cookies and then came back, and guess what? They're a new user. So different things like that can happen that can throw it off. What I would say with marketing data in general is that it's never going to be perfect. And what I would do in terms of that, just talking in general, is that, for example, like transactions and things like that, compare that to your actual transactions, to your actual numbers that you would find in your e-commerce platform and, you know, through your finance and stuff like that, and see how far apart they are. If they're more than I would say 10 or 15%, then there's excuse me, then there's probably a problem. But if they're within that range or less, great. Then it's probably pretty close. So with the multi-channel attribution, what I would say is that typically, if you add that into the mix, and you're not just taking, you know, the numbers that you see on all the Google Analytics reports, but you're adding in this multi-channel attribution, it can be more accurate. How much more accurate depends on how many people come and purchase based on a multi-channel, you know, based on that multi-channels, those multiple channels. So if you, like I said before, if you do have a lot of people that are coming, you know, through a display ad, and then through a, you know, then through a paid search ad, and then through organic or something like that, then yeah, you definitely want to add in that multi-channel. Otherwise, what's going to happen? You're going to get rid of those display ads because they don't seem to be doing any good. And then all of a sudden your sales drop, and you're wondering, well, why did our sales drop? Well, you know, it turns out that top of funnel, those people were coming in, they weren't purchasing on their first visit, and they were coming back later. So yeah, so it definitely can be. Again, as an analyst, you really just want to dig into that data, and you want to figure out for yourself, you know, how accurate is this going to be for our company, and how much should we pay attention to this? Because obviously it's easier to just go in Google Analytics and, you know, look at your source mediums, and then, you know, figure out what's working, what's not working, and make those calculations, right?
Yeah.
And that might be just fine, but it also might be highly inaccurate, just depending on your particular business.
Yeah, I would add here is, you know, back to the question, which is if you have created custom channel groupings. So one question is, why are you creating custom channel groupings? What's the business reason behind it? And once you understand that there is a business reason, hey, we want to group these things in here. And as far as the accuracy of attribution model, uh, you know, I think whatever web analytics data is not going to be accurate. Like it's not going to give you 100% match there, but it's always going to be precise. Every time you will get the similar scenarios in those. So keep that in mind. And if once you have defined your business model, you know the business outcome that you want. Why are you creating certain channel groupings, or what's the purpose of a particular channel? You have to think in those terms to see if actually attribution model is giving you the right answer, or you need to adjust your thinking there. So I won't say, hey, 50% here, 25% here, and let's go ahead and immediately adjust your spend. It's more about learning and then making small tweaks to then measure them, and then see how the models now work or how your conversions work. So it's more for like learning and testing is how I would approach than absolute terms. Let's turn this off. We can't. Let's make a minor tweak here. We're seeing that email is actually not driving. Okay, what we're going to drop is drop here and move the paid search. Look at it. It's a test you're running. And then does it make a difference? Now you know how you get it. Other is you can use machine learning. So another comment here, and then we'll go to the calculated metrics. So Michael, let me know if you have further questions. But Manjari Singh, thank you. And God and understanding. So, yes. Folded hands emoji. God. So that's great. Cool.
All right. So, yeah, so I think, I don't know if anybody has questions on calculated metrics. I mean, it's pretty straightforward overall. It's just, metrics that you calculate using other metrics, so, these could end up turning out to be for your, organization could end up being your KPI, so which are generally calculated metrics of some kind, either already in Google Analytics or ones that you customize, that you create.
Yep.
So there's that one. Yeah, so going from there, the next one, going in alphabetical order, is cohort analysis. I think this sometimes is confusing to people.
Yes.
So let me just define what a cohort is, because it was confusing to me when I first heard it. A cohort to me is the same thing as a segment. It's basically, you take maybe some people who, I want to look at people who are from 18 to 24, and they are first purchasers. You can add into that, and they purchased in October, right? So that can be, it's a cohort, that's a group of people. It's also, in a sense, that's a segment. So that's, basic way to look at it. If you go into Google Analytics and you go into your audience, you have, again, one that's been in beta for quite some time, this cohort analysis.
Yeah.
There are a few of these.
Yeah. They'll remain in beta. Now they're moving to Google Analytics 4. I think the development is moving there.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's one I haven't had a chance to play around with too much, but it looks fantastic. And I love that you can bring all that into Google BigQuery, which will be awesome.
Yeah. Maybe you should watch all the videos on this channel. There are a bunch of sessions done on Google Analytics 4.
That would be, I'll have to take a look at everything. Yeah, I just haven't had the time to look at it myself and look it up close. But yeah, it looks really good. So so this is what you have in Google Analytics, is that you have this cohort analysis. Now, this particular one, this type of thing, I haven't used as much. What you're really keying off of here is the acquisition date. So it's basically like everybody, in this case, it's by day, or we can do by week or whatever.
Yeah, I want to stop you right here, because one thing you started, which is what's a cohort, right? It's a group of people. I think this is where the confusion lies. And the way Google Analytics does is this can be group of people by any attributes. In case of Google Analytics, the attribute is the acquisition date. Yeah. That's what they're looking at. So when did the person first come to the site, and then they are using that as a grouping to see how they behave as time goes forward. So that's what they're doing in this.
Yeah, and this
day 0 is the day then that group of users was acquired, and then day 1, day 2, day 3.
Yeah, and so that's kind of stretching out. That's why you have this by day, so that you're looking at day 1, day 0, the day that they came, and then day 1 to 2, day 3, and this one is looking at user retention. You could look at a number of different things. So goal completions, or how many page views, something like that. So these people who came on January 21st, how many page views did they see the next day and the day after that, and so on. Of this group of people, of this 7,995. So that's one way to look at it. Another thing you can do, even in here, if you like those particular attributes, is you can create a segment. And custom segments is actually right down here on the list, not too far down. But this is one of my favorite things. I love custom segments, or I think I call them report segments, but report segmentation. But this is really, if you want to look at this, you can come up with all kinds of, you want to look at, just mobile traffic. You can do that. And then you can look at this, just sort of slice and dice this data. So now we have one of these with all users, and we have another one with mobile traffic. So we're really looking at those cohorts based on, in this case, the cohort is a subgroup of all users, and it's just those people that came through mobile. So we had all users was 50,000. We had mobile users of almost 12,000. And so you can look at how those behave versus those. And what you're really trying to do with cohort analysis, in any sense that you do this, is you're really trying to look at the difference between the two groups. So you're trying to separate those two groups out, and that can be really important. I mean, if you were to pull a lot of this data, for example, into R, you might look at it and see that, for example, that you have two peaks on some given thing. Probably not giving a great example here, but a lot of times if you, in statistics textbooks, you might see two peaks and you realize you actually have two groups or two cohorts. So if you split those out, it makes a lot more sense than if you just bring them together, because they're not actually a normal sample. So so that's one way to look at that. So here you're really trying to look at, and you might even have another one looking at like non-mobile or whatever you want to look at. But the most important thing I think to take away from this, to me, is how you can create these cohorts. Really, you can do this up here. So you can actually go over, for example, if you want to look at acquisition and you want to maybe look at, well, let's do channels. So up here, you can look at all users versus mobile traffic, or we can even take this one. Yeah, let's see. So we have mobile. Let's do, what was the other one? Mobile. Something that makes sense here. Oh, there we go. Cool. And then maybe take off this one. All right. Cool. So now we can look at mobile users versus tablet and desktop. So this would be two cohorts. One is all the mobile traffic, the other one is tablet and desktop during this particular time period. And then you can look at the difference between the e-commerce conversion rate. So mobile traffic had, a 0.09% e-commerce rate in this one. So you can see the tablet and desktop, much higher transaction conversion rate than the mobile traffic. But that's what you're trying to do, is segment these out so that you can see the different behaviors between them. What is the bounce rate? You can see mobile traffic much higher. So if this was your company, you could look at this and go, what are the things we can do to maybe bring this bounce rate down? Why is the mobile traffic so much higher than the desktop? Well, how come it doesn't convert as well? I mean, here you could throw out well, maybe it's, you're not using PayPal. Maybe you're not using, Apple Pay or something like that. Maybe if we add those things in, maybe our mobile traffic e-commerce conversion rate will go way up, because it's kind of hard to type in all your information on a mobile device. So you can look at things like that and come up with some hypothesis as to why there's a difference. So this is another great tool that you can use to be able to look at cohorts, not just using the audience cohorts, but you can also do this in a number of different ways.
Yeah, and you can add this segment like you showed with the mobile traffic.
Yes.
And then you can figure out, what's going on. Let's say you find a particular particular day or week when you acquired some customers who are actually behaving very different than the other group. And you can figure out, okay, what did we do on that particular time? How did we acquire them? That's another way to analyze your data, figure out what marketing channels are working, what acquisition strategies are working, what was going on in that for those particular users that they are behaving differently than others also. That's the way you can combine these three things. And also even like your attribution model, that's where you can go and say, for that particular set of users, this attribution model showed, how they were behaving. What did we do so different? What happened in that scenario? So you have to look at different angles, and these three features are great for those.
Yeah, so this is really great. It kind of combines one of my other, which we're kind of really getting into. I'm kind of jumping down to the custom reports here.
Okay, all right.
But this is really what this is basically custom reports are really, advanced segmentation. So I'm sorry, not custom reports. What did I call it? Report segmentation. So I think it was what it was. Yeah. So, but yeah, this is fantastic to use too. So, and you don't see a lot of stuff with this kind of stuff where you can do this on the fly, and there's so many different things that you can come up with if you use this. So you can let's see if we have was that anything else here? No. Oh, all. Okay. Oh, I see. New segment. So the thing with these kind of going into just these segments and stuff is, look at this. You can create your segments based on age, gender, the language. This is all coming from Google. They get some sense of who the visitor is. And so that's one way to do it, or by their visits. So what's great about this is pan session activity. So I want to see people who come to my site more than once or more than twice. I want to see people who, have been, 15 days or 30 days since they last came. So, or those that have had 3 or more transactions and so on. So there's a number of different ways that you can segment and create these cohorts using the segmentation. So this is a phenomenal feature. It's probably one of my very, very favorites inside of the interface. So I love this particular one. So this is great. The next thing that I have that is custom dashboards. So custom dashboards is up in customization, so you can create your own dashboard. Looks like there's a few of them in this particular view where they have a couple different dashboards. So this isn't, let's see what that looks like. So you can create a dashboard of, different reports with little metrics and stuff like that, different tables, and you can, put in here different graphs and so on for things that you want to look at. A couple of these things have probably, I would say, have been superseded by Google Data Studio, which I would encourage everyone to play around with for sure. It's a phenomenal tool, and just like Google Analytics, it's free. It won't cost you anything to start off with, and you can use your own blog or whatever and create, create your Google Data Studio dashboard, and reports and all that kind of stuff. So, so kind of it's been superseded by that. But one of the things you can do with the custom reports and the dashboards in here, if you want to, is that you can email them. So you can email those out, and I'll show those in a little bit. But that's basically custom dashboards. Not every platform has custom dashboards that you can just create your own stuff. So that's one of the things that you have in here.
Yep, cool. Yeah, I'd recommend using Data Studio as much as you can, but if your users are going to go in Google Analytics, you don't want to have them go through another tool, then just create them here. I think there are certain things which are easy to do in this interface than they are in Google Data Studio.
Yeah, and some people, they just want to use one tool. So it's like, you can create custom dashboard. Mm-hmm. So the next one, I think these are really great, particularly as you get more advanced into capturing data and stuff like that. And this is both custom dimensions and custom metrics. So I've used these quite extensively. Every organization has different things that they want to have different dimensions depending on what you're doing. When I worked at Eastlawn, we had all kinds of custom dimensions, and people would go through our widget and, our questionnaire thing and like the hair color they had or different things like that. So to understand that, it was vital to know, what's working for people and what's not working for people based on some of these custom dimensions and custom metrics. So in this particular view here, we have different ones. So, we have, they have product ID. Okay, so a user category, they might have a sales region. So that's fantastic. If somebody comes in from the region or something like that. So, you have to think about it for your own organization. What are those things that would be custom, would be not things that you would normally find in Google Analytics. And this is where you can put those custom dimensions. So I think some people may be confused about the difference between a dimension and a metric. So a dimension is basically how you can segment things. So just like an age category or user or different products or that type of thing, these are things you can't aggregate. Whereas custom metrics will be things you can aggregate. So let's see what they have in custom metrics here. Do they have anything interesting? So session type, I don't know, whatever that was. But so metrics are just things that you can add together. So you might have a metric like, make an appointment or something like that. So you can calculate how many appointments were made, and that might end up being a metric. And then you could have a custom dimension as what type of appointment that they made. So those would be the things. Now, if you look at one of these, this is what it looks like inside of it, and it looks, you've got some code over here. So of course, this is more advanced because you need to do a little bit of programming, or you need to use Google Tag Manager so that you can pull these things into Google Tag Manager. So it's a little bit beyond the what we're talking about, but basically you can either have a developer help you, or if you do know Google Tag Manager, or you know how to develop, then you can pull that in yourself. And this one is, in this case, is called Dimension 4. That's really actually what it is. Even though you call it a name, inside of Google Analytics, it's going to be Dimension 4.
Yeah, so, I'm just going to add something here. So
sure.
Very powerful feature. You can bring in offline data to enhance this as well with the, maybe you're covering that as well, which is the import functionality, user level information. So some of the things that we commonly use are customer ID, customer loyalty, and customer's main language, etc. And the metrics could be there, the lifetime value of a customer that comes in as well. You can pass that. So, and those who are interested, there is actually, that's covered in Google Analytics Advanced in course that's on the platform, as well as Google Tag Manager course. I go through the details of how to set this up. Very powerful feature, in my opinion, so that you can bring more data into Google Analytics with this one. Yeah, just wanted to throw that out, and a little plug for the course as well.
Yeah. So so these are two really great things, a little more advanced, but this is how you can capture more data. And so one of the features I really love to see. And yeah, in some cases I don't know what I'd do without. We would just have very big gaps in our in data.
Yeah.
So the next one I'm going to cover.
Before you proceed, I have a question from Manjari Singh on custom dashboards. Can custom dashboards be pulled from shared library?
Can they what?
Can they be pulled from shared library? I think they can be. So if you go back,
I think
templates.
Yeah, I believe they do. I think there's a number of different templates for that one.
Yeah, I think you can share your own as well to this is the community dashboards or whatever that's called.
Yeah, let's take a look in here too.
Customize.
Yeah, customize. And let's take a look at this e-commerce one. Share. So you can share the template link, or you can share in the solutions gallery. So
and you can bring it from there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can also you can export it too. So
yeah.
Now, one of the things that you can add to this are custom reports. So do they have any? So in this particular one, there is no custom reports, but I probably use custom reports more than we're talking about over the years than custom dashboard, because I wanted to create my own set of metrics and dimensions that I wanted to look at that were not available in the regular reports.
Actually go back to custom reports. I want to call out, I think maybe that's what Manjari is asking. There. So here you can import from gallery right there. Yes. You have import from gallery and that down there below, or you can pick.
Oh, yeah.
But so, I don't think it's in the dashboard. Can you go back in the dashboard?
Dashboard you have to create. I think the reason is because dashboard, if you created a bunch of custom reports, you can put that into your dashboard. So it's a little hard. First, you have to have the custom reports before you can have the dashboard. So yeah, if you go to custom reports, and you can import that, from the gallery. So there's a number of different ones, but it looks like it builds the whole thing, because here's a content analysis dashboard.
Yeah.
So
this part just have to go in that custom report section to pull it out.
Right, and then bring that in. But this I like because you can bring in your whatever metrics you want, how you want it to look, either as Explorer or as a flat table, and whatever filters you want, and whether you want it to be associated with all your views, and, you can even do it other accounts and stuff, other accounts, or just this one. So, so it's really flexible. I really like this a lot. And then you can title it, and you can have a number of tabs if you want, and that type of thing. So it's a very simple way. If there's only certain things that you want to look at, or you want to combine a few things, this is a good way to do it through the custom reports. And then you can add it to your dashboard, and then you can send it out as a scheduled email. So,
Yeah.
so you just
And yeah, like looking at this interface, like, some things are much easier to create here than they are in Google Data Studio. It's a matter of you, which one interface do you like, and what data you want to show and how. Yeah, so this one's really great. So that's covering some of the customization with custom reports and dashboards and all that kind of stuff. If we go to the next one, I thought was really quite big too, and that's event tagging. So many years ago, there was no event tagging. So if you wanted to create an event, and this was if anybody remembers doing anything during the time of Flash, people creating Flash sites where they'd have to upload the whole thing, and so on. Everything was an event. There was no pages. So you had to create what we would call fake page views. And that was the only way to do that, was fake page views. So that each of those page views was not really a page view, but that's what we called it. And then if you wanted to do that on your site, everything that you clicked on and stuff, it had to be a fake page view. So they came out with event tagging, which is fantastic. And let me see in here if we can find, should be right there. Ooh, event, there it is. So let's see if there's any events there. Yeah, and those who are actually now trying to learn Google Analytics 4, certain events are captured automatically. Page scrolls, external link clicks, file downloads, on-site search, they are tracked automatically. They're called enhanced measurements. I mean, it's just one checkbox and they get automatically tracked. Yeah, my understanding is in Google Analytics 4, everything basically is an event, which is great. Yes. That's really what it should be. And I think that this kind of also goes into like, what data should you capture? I've heard a lot of different discussions over that. And so my own view about that is everything that you can capture that is reasonable, you should capture. And the reason I say that is because your future self will probably thank you. There might be a handful of metrics that you think are really important and the rest of them don't really matter. And your future self might go, actually, there was other ones that I didn't capture that I probably should have captured, and now they're gone and I don't have them. So, so that's my take on it. You can, the nice thing about that is if you capture all this stuff, and I mean reasonable, if there's certain things that capturing it, would take, days and weeks and tons of money and seems not very, doesn't seem to be of huge interest to your business. Obviously there's a few things that you can that you can pass over, but for the most part, if you can capture it and it's reasonable, you should, because you can just ignore it if you don't need it, but it's there if you do, and your future self will thank you for sure. Well, I have 2 points of views on those things. So one, yes, I agree. Capture everything that you can read and it's reasonable, or just capture it because you will have it, right? And your future self will thank you. But then also other side of me says, if you expose this to all the business users, then they start using it in the way that you don't expect it to be used. And then you get so many questions. I deal with that all the time. Hey, why did that? Like, you're not supposed to look at that because it's not for those purposes. So you have to be careful in what access information you give it to others as well. But for our analysts, every data point can add value. If you start to capture all this, you can run models, you can analyze the data with those. When you expose it to business users who are going to be using the information, then they get all confused by different data points, and then you end up answering questions which are not even relevant to their business. just tell them to go to the dashboard and the reports that you just focus on the dashboard that have been built for you. Ignore these other shiny things. Stop looking at those.
Yeah, so, but actually sometimes they ask really good questions too. Some of you know, I always enjoy talking to them, like the marketing people and stuff like that. And it's like, well, can we do this? Or
Hey, you are going as a consultant. So as a consultant, you're billing for every question. And
yeah,
when people are internally, they're like, I have 15 other things. Should I focus my time on you or this?
yeah. So yeah, but it can keep you busy.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this is event tagging. This is where you find the events, and basically, you know, this is again where you probably are going to need to work closely with the developer to add these events in. There are some ways around that using Google Tag Manager and stuff, but normally it's really good if you're going to throw things into the data layer in Google Tag Manager. Probably good to, you know, work hand in hand with the developer to do that kind of stuff. And then you can have your different events. And what is really great to me about this is that, for example, if you have a number of things on a page that people can interact with, and you don't have events on there, they might interact with a bunch of things on a page and spend a bunch of time and then leave. And it might look like a bounce because you didn't capture anything else. You just captured that they, you know, came to a page and then they left. So adding in these things can be very helpful in that way, but it can also be helpful in understanding what they actually are interacting with on your page. So if you have different things, and these days even more so that happens, you know, with the kind of programming that we can do, like Ajax and other kinds of stuff, and you know, React and all that, you know, we're able to do a lot more stuff than ever before. So it's good to work with your developers to tag those things and kind of have a good, you know, open channel there. So like, hey, we should tag this, or, you know, them coming to you, like, we're implementing this, you know, what would you like tagged, and so on. And then just coming up with a standardization for how you're going to name things and so on, because you have category, you have action, and you have the label for it. So in here we have, let's see, contact us. And that's an on-site click is the only action there, but so.
And you get to define whatever action labels,
Yes.
categories you want.
And then what the label is. So, you know, so this particular one was contact us, and you can now split this out. And how many people contact us by email, or how many people click the phone. So it's kind of click to email, click to phone. And so this is what it looks like here for this particular time period.
Yeah, the concept of category, event, label, and action is going away in Google Analytics 4. But
Yeah.
Universal Analytics is here to stay. This version of Google Analytics is not going anywhere, in my opinion. It is predominantly used. I was creating a video yesterday talking about the same thing. Is Google is forcing you to create new properties in Google Analytics 4, but there is a way that I showed in that video how to create Universal Analytics property, because this is not going anywhere. Companies are using it. People are so used to using it. It'll take maybe 4, 5, 6 years before it all vanishes.
Oh yeah, I think it's a very different way to look at things.
Correct.
Yeah. So yeah.
So learn both.
No fear. Don't fear that it's going away.
It's not.
All right. So that's basically, you know, I would read up on that more and look at that. Sometimes the implementation can be a little confusing, but you just have to, you know, once you kind of study it for a while, you know, you'll get it. It's a great thing to have.
So Darren, just to time check, we are over an hour. We can continue. I've scheduled for 2 hours this thing. I knew we're gonna go over, but just to let you know, and I know some people have already dropped off, so we can cover whatever. I just want to let you know. So
So
in next few minutes, maybe if we can cover, then I can take questions after that.
Yeah, so you know, we're going to go through these a little bit faster. I think external data import. This is if you have data. Let's see where that.
Under the product.
Right in here, isn't it? Data import, yeah. So this is something where I don't think I'm allowed to do it here, but anyway. All right, so let's just talk about it. So data import is that you can take external data, you can bring it into your Google Analytics property. And so that could be from, like, you know, Facebook ads and stuff. Why would you want to do that? Well, you might want cost data in your Google Analytics. So, so that's one reason why you might want to do that. That's the reason I liked it, was something, you know, to be able to pull that data in. Another way to do that, of course, is you use the API, you pull it into R, and then you start, merging the data there. So that's another way to do it. But with this one, if you want to have like one central place that you want to like put all your data, you can import your data into Google Analytics to do that. So
yeah, I bring in customer level data, so the user ID, logged in user IDs, and what their other attributes are. So like their loyalty index and all that stuff in using data import.
what's going on here?
And the good thing is all the attributes that you're bringing in, you can then create segments based on those and even do retargeting based on those.
Yeah, so that's really great. And yeah, so that's something that you don't see in every every platform. And now the next one is, so I use that sometimes, but again, a lot of times I'm also pulling things into R. The next one is hugely important, which is filters. So filters are super important. Why? The reason for filters is to filter out, you can filter things out for one thing, like, or add things such as including the host name. So maybe you have things coming from a number of different, what am I thinking of? Subnets. Yeah.
Domains.
Yeah, different things, and so you might want to include the host name too. So
yeah,
that type of thing. Yeah, that's one reason. The biggest reason for me, though, there's usually a lot of times because of different platforms and stuff, you might have a lot of extraneous stuff in the link. So, for example, in some platforms, when you purchase something, in the link itself is actually your transaction number. So then what happens is everybody who purchases something has their own individual link, and that shows up in your Google Analytics. So you might want to strip that out so that you can aggregate that. And this is a good time to also think about that when you do create views, that maybe you have something like this has, which is they have a master view, and then there's a raw view, and then there's a test view. And this is pretty much, except that there's other things, other types of views that I want to use. This would be a nice way to set it up. This is your raw. This is one you use so that you don't mess up, this one. So if you might want to like build out some filters and see how they work out, you might want to start here, and then you move it into here, and then you just leave raw alone, and you don't do anything with the raw. So the raw is going to have, all that transaction data, whatever, it's going to be in that raw one. But that way you can strip that out. Another reason to use it is if you're using, the campaign variables on the end of your URLs, so that you're capturing all that campaign information. So, UTM underscore medium, UTM underscore source, that type of stuff. So if you're putting those there, I can't think of a time where I haven't gone into a client and some of them had them uppercase, lowercase, camel case, all over the place. And so what happens is each of those then add a new line into your Google Analytics so that they aggregate based on the case. So it is case sensitive. So what you can do here is you can actually create your own filter and just have everything lowercase or have everything uppercase, however you want to handle that so that it's in sync, it's all the same. But once again, I would make sure that you still have that raw view so you can see exactly what's happening as well. So keep that there all the time.
Yeah, and another thing, the common filter that these days people use is when you post something on Facebook, it just adds FB click ID, FB CLID on behind every URL.
Right.
And that messes up your reporting. So you want to strip that out. And if you're interested, like how to do it, there is also a video that I put on a channel on how to remove FB CLID. That'll give you an idea of how to create these things. Very powerful features. Yes, thank you.
Yes, so that's that one. And report segmentation is something we talked about. So we talked about, segmenting things out to create cohorts and that type of stuff. So that's something that's there. And we talked about scheduled emails, which is here. So you can schedule an email here and come up with something, or I believe you can do that there. And you can, and any report, you can schedule it. And you can either schedule it once or on an ongoing basis, and then put people's email and addresses in there, and then that will just send it off to them. So I definitely use that quite a bit. you know, for people that just want to get that. They don't want to go into Google Analytics. They just want to get the report. And so you can send that off using scheduled emails. And so that's actually all 15, but I have one more. If you see my blog, my wife pointed it out, but it's not for everybody. It's only if you have Google Analytics 360, and that's to be able to roll up all your properties. So you can roll them up into one. So if you happen to have a couple of different sites, maybe you have a US site and you have a UK site, and you want to roll those up, and those are two different properties, then you can roll them up using, you know, there's a web property roll up, and that can be really helpful. Again, if you don't have that and you want to do it another way, use that API, and you can do that in R. And that's usually where I personally tend to do things.
Cool.
And so that's all of them. That's the 15 plus 1.
Wow, cool. Thank you. This was wonderful. You know, I going through some of these things and where they are, actually, it's a good refresher for people who even know and use it, because you get so logged into like, hey, this is what I do, and forget about other features that are available or could be used.
Right? I forget things too.
Yeah, and starting from annotation, right? That's a big one, in my opinion, which one you started with. And definitely all the features are great, but annotation, which is a very, very simple thing, but most forgotten. And then people scratch their head on what happened, right? So great list. Thank you very much. Here is a question from Michael Huntington. Do you have any favorite custom or regular segments to get quick results?
Not offhand. It would really depend, you know, on the company and what I'm looking at. Actually, it's funny because just thinking about those types of things, not so much. Yeah, it's usually looking at the standard reports, and I'll tell you, I've seen some debate about like things like bounce rate, but you know, using Avinash Kaushik's word, I think bounce rate is a very sexy metric.
Yeah.
So I actually like it because you can see immediately. You know, you look at bounce rate, you look at your e-commerce conversion rate, for example, and some of those types of things, and you can kind of already get a sense of how things are working from there. But some of these other ones, trying to think if there's anything. I tend to just go in there and
mobile and desktop is one of the ones you'll see.
Yeah.
Wide differences as you were showing in the reports.
Yeah.
On the e-commerce store, right? Mobile had very low conversions, and desktop and tablet had high conversion. Now, given the time we live in where everybody's on their phone, why is the conversion so low, right? Is that process, checkout process, so cumbersome?
Yeah.
What's happening there? So that's the one I most of the time I use. And the other one is, if you have you know, audience segment that you care about, like the age demographic. So I also use the age ones to see, am I catering to the right folks? One of the things my student pointed out to me on Optisant Academy, because we have the courses, there was an image of a young girl looking at the courses, and he is not in that category. So he came to me and he goes, Anil, looking at that picture, it seems like that's platform is not for me, right? I'm not in that age range. That looks like somebody who's out of college. So that was like something which I had to look at. Okay, who are these people who are coming? Yes, definitely when you start, you want to cater to a broader audience, but then you narrow it down. So age is one of those things that I look at and say, who is this? What's their demographic, whether it's age, gender, and then platform. Those are the ones I commonly use. And other than that, it's all business based.
Yeah, and it's just I think it's just a great thing to just you know, when you have time and you're doing stuff, is to just play around with it and think of those things for your business. Well, what about these people, or what about this behavior, and that type of stuff. So you know, for me, I guess you could say one of the things I really look at is how often are people coming to the site. So I mean, you know. Yeah, and where are they coming from, and that type of thing. So, you know, are we really just getting a lot of people just coming once and never coming back again? So, yeah. So with the segments, the biggest thing to me is just how, you know, I just create so many different segments because I want to look at so many different things. I go, well, what about this? What about that? So that I get a really good sense and a deep sense of how the you know, how things are performing on the site. And I think that's a big difference between, you know, being an analyst and really digging into the data And, there are people who just go, well, I don't understand why you need that. You just go in there, you just take a look at some of the metrics. And, you see that a lot where it's like, well, I mean, I just see where they're coming. I just see, that they came from, paid search. And then this is the conversion rate. What do I need? What else do I, so as an analyst, you're always thinking about like, well, what about this segment? Or what about these people who did this, but didn't do that?
Yeah.
And so that way you can really, you can really dig in and get the real story and find those areas where, you could also test, for example, look for those areas where you can go, ooh, this is a good area, like I was saying, like about the, when we were looking at the mobile and going like, we could test. And that's probably what I would do, by the way. I would want to test, let's add Apple Pay and then test that versus the way it currently is. And so that you add another layer to it. And that layer is that testing. So you don't just throw Apple Pay on there, but you test it, you test and see. You test and see which one, does it actually increase, lift that conversion or does it not? So yeah, it steps you into the other area, which is the optimization area.
Yeah. Michael says, thanks. That's really helpful. Yeah. And to add to your point, I mean, that's an excellent point. The way you broke it down, like as an analyst, you want to explore, you're looking at different ways, right? It's the mindset. If you have a business problem, you approach from a business problem, what's the question I'm trying to answer? And then what segments, what data do I need for that? And then there is analyst mindset, which is I want to explore and find out, can I find those things that can help our business? Can I look at different segments? Can I look at different metrics? In that case, there is no one segment that you look at. You'll play with all sorts of things. And that's why Darren was saying is he creates a bunch of segments and looks at it. So
yeah. And it's just the analytical mindset too.
yeah.
It just came to my mind thinking of there was some analysis done on taxi drivers in New York City and getting cash versus getting a credit card, and which one did you end up getting a bigger tip from?
Yeah.
This was a really interesting layered one to me because it ended up being on the credit card. So first we take the tact of, well, okay, maybe the data is correct, it's all correct. And so why would that be? And it's like, well, because they're not actually handing you cash. So they're actually just putting a number down and maybe, if they hand you cash, they only have so much, so they can't give you a bigger tip. But the other thing as an analyst is that you have to go back and think about that data. And it's like, well, maybe when they're paying cash and you're getting a cash tip, you're not actually declaring that cash tip. So it's getting more. So as an analyst, you always have to look at not just the data you're getting, but where, and it's really important, where is this data coming from? So if you're looking at Google Analytics, but your Google Analytics isn't set up right, then you may have some problems. Like I have had many issues with e-commerce sites where there's multiple transactions for the same transaction ID.
Yeah.
And
that reminds me, I should do another session where we bring in different ideas of how the data was looked and kind of insights that were driven from those. Because I have another one. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, yeah, it's so important to then question the data too, so that you're, and as we all know, for anybody who's who is analyst or wants to be one, is that particularly in marketing stuff, like there's no such thing as a perfect data set. You'll never get it. And even when you're doing machine learning and stuff, it's very exciting stuff. But I will tell you that most of your work will be in cleaning that data. So we call it data munging. So doing that data munging is going to be probably the most of your job. And you're going to be like, I just want to get to machine learning. And it's like, you're going to find the machine learning part is really very small. It's taking a recipe, putting some things in, and then letting it run. So that's kind of how it works.
Yeah. And I think also, data, you'll be cleaning a lot of this data, bringing in, and as you're thinking through, you might need more data, and which again takes more time. All those, one call out I want to make is, as Darren was talking about the import functionality, custom dimensions, very important features, because you can bring in external data to enhance it. Don't think just in terms of Google Analytics and what it captures. Think about other stuff that can come in. He talked about taxi cab tip information. I mean, there is analysis we did on a big retailer by bringing in competitive data, layering in like city level information, and then weather information to come up with analysis. And things that you find are really amazing. Like, and there are many of them are counterintuitive. Like in a highly competitive place, for example, we found, and during Christmas time, you actually sell toys which are more expensive than less competitive landscape or areas. So which is very counterintuitive because when you think more competition, you think less lower prices. But in case of this retailer, we found actually it's higher prices in very competitive area. And why was that? Then you come up with your hypothesis and you start testing those things. But that's how you have to start to look at, where you're going, whether it's attribution models that we were talking about, whether and using all these. Sorry, I hit my mic. Um, and the features you have talked about. Great features. I mean, these are push your limits by using all the features that he was talking about.
Yeah.
One more question here from Manjari Singh. Do you have anything like a heat map in Google Analytics, or can we devise it through event tracking? Great question. There used to be a map or click map or whatever they were calling it. So what's your take or answer on that? Do we have one?
I remember there was something like that. But for those type of things, so it's a great question because now what you're really talking about is you're starting about getting into like the qualitative analytics. So like a hot jar would work, so in Google Analytics itself, I wouldn't use it for that. But there are great qualitative analytics tools, full story. But I would absolutely encourage you to use those things too. So, the one thing I would say about Google Analytics is it's not the end all be all of all analytics, of course. So these other things are really, really helpful tools. And I would encourage everyone to look at those types of tools where, they can actually record too, anonymously, people coming to your site, where they click, where they put their mouse, how they navigate your site. And I think those are really great. And you can look at those like, 2 times, 3, 4 times the speed, so that you could go through like, a couple hundred of them fairly quickly and see what is happening and so on.
Yeah. So Hotjar is one. I also did a session, which is Microsoft's new tool called Clarity. That allows you to track if you can, again, watch it on the channel. I did like maybe late last year. I did a session where I showed how to use that tool. Can you drive it through event tracking? I mean, if you really want to you can do something fancy with event tracking, but it's going to be hard to put your screen sizes on different devices. So I would let a tool like Hotjar or like Microsoft Clarity do the work for you. Yeah, check it out. Clarity is free. It's actually powerful. It's free. Hotjar is free to a limited set of recordings, but Clarity is free, completely free.
Yeah. So
try those out.
Yeah. I like free and open source tools. I've become a real convert to that, even when it comes to databases, which is where I was originally from, is working a lot with databases and stuff. And I couldn't imagine an open source database. And now I'm not sure I could imagine using one that I'd have to pay for
it. Yeah, we're getting used to all the free stuff that we can get, right?
It's great because we can all then contribute too, which is really awesome. So if you know enough programming, there's a lot of stuff, you can go into GitHub and take a look at all the stuff that's out there, and see some of those things which you can actually work on and contribute to. So it's kind of fun, and you can add that to your resume.
Yes, that's cool. All right, I don't think there are any more questions, so we will be wrapping this up. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop them as a comment, and I will make sure Darren goes through those and responds to them. So, and I will put a link to his blog in the comments. And any questions you have at any time, feel free to drop in, because I keep watching, or I get notification whenever there is a question, even on a video that was done a few months ago or years ago. Manjari says, okay, thank you, gives a thumbs up. So that's great. Thank you, Darren. This was wonderful. Like I said before, sometimes we forget those features that are available. So it's a good refresher on those, as well as hearing your point of view on how you're using. So I learned a lot during this process.
Good.
And I'm sure these guys learned here too. So it was wonderful. And hopefully we'll do another session with you where we can go into one of these features or certain other things deeper. And
Yeah.
just maybe an R session, who knows how to do
We can tear into
APIs.
we can tear into some R programming. So
Yeah, and see how you use
I'll take
APIs
you all
to build.
step by step. You know, it won't be scary.
That'll be wonderful. Cool. All right, guys, thank you very much. And we are at 12, so generally 1:30 or 1 hour and 30 minutes is when we end it. So we're right on time. And make sure next week we will be doing another session. And every Thursday at 10:30 we have a session that covers different topics, whether it's Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, Web Analytics, and conversion optimization. So we have some of those coming up as well. And we'll bring Darren back for step-by-step on API. So I'll just need to set up some time with you.
Sounds great.
Cool. Thank you, Darren.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.